What's up, Canuck fans? Welcome to The Line Change, which is a presentation of DraftKings Sportsbook, as well as a proud member of the Hockey Podcast Network. Be sure to check out the network for your favorite podcast covering your favorite team at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com, the home of hockey podcasts, every team, everywhere. Sorry, I just about choked on my coffee there. Actually, I just realized my light's still on. I'm going to turn that off. There we go. All right. Now, before we have Jeff on, Jeff will be on at about approximately 4 o'clock. I wanted to go over some updates that we have that actually came out after I put out my next report, which is, they couldn't have done it sooner. I would have, included it with the next report. But anyway, we've got some updates on both Brock Besser and Zeev Buium coming out of yesterday's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, as well as corresponding call-ups made by the Canucks due to the injuries. The Canucks have placed Brock Besser on the injured reserve retroactive to yesterday, meaning he's going to miss at minimum the next 3 games. Jonathan Lekaramäki has been called up from the Abbotsford Canucks, where he has been on an absolute heater down in the AHL with 10 goals and 16 points in 16 games. Zeev Buium, as we mentioned, was also placed on the injured reserve retroactive to yesterday as well after taking a puck to the face. Obviously a scary scene yesterday. He did return and finish the game, wearing a full face shield, but I saw like a little picture of him, and yeah, he looked like he had a black eye. So also it's being reported by the likes of TSN's Darren Dreger that Buium is likely out at least a week to 2 weeks. Does make you wonder if they just keep him out for the Olympic break and not rush him back so he can fully heal. Also, I've seen some people talking about it on social media, particularly X, questioning why did he come back and keep playing if, it was so serious. Obviously people were saying like maybe they noticed something after the game and, didn't notice it at first. I've seen that. In his place, Victor Mancini was called up from the Abbotsford Canucks to replace Zeev Buium. Of course, Mancini had a brief stint with the Canucks, having been called up earlier this month and played, I believe it was, 1, maybe 2 games before being sent back down to Abbotsford. So, yeah, let's go ahead and check it out. So as you guys can see here, Patrick Allvin announcing it. We mentioned how, and this is just yet another injury for the Vancouver Canucks, another blow. Excuse the pun a little bit there, but especially with Besser, considering what happened to him last season when he took that, shot to the head from Tanner Jeannot. He ended up missing 7 games because of that. So he ended up missing some significant time. And some would even say when that happened to Besser, it kind of halted his production. He was actually, I believe, doing actually pretty decently to start the season, after coming off of that 40-goal season. And then that just really halted his momentum. And he just never really got his footing again and never really truly recovered from that. I don't know if you guys noticed that as well. Let me know in the comments if you guys did. But that kind of halted his momentum. And granted, this is a lot later on in the season than it happened previously. So hopefully it's nothing too serious and Besser is going to be okay. But, I've been looking at, different angles of the hit. There's, the one from that was actually on TV, and then they had the replay one where it's behind the net, and it gives you a really good look at it. And I'm going to talk with Jeff about it when he's on. And yeah, originally when I saw the from behind the net angle, it looked as though Rust charged towards Besser. and then, got his elbow up and clipped him like on the jaw. And then obviously it doesn't help matters that you have Raquel shoving Besser forward. So, kind of like pushing him into the contact. And then I noticed Rust falling to the ice afterwards. Originally, I thought it was maybe his momentum from having, because if you really look at the highlights of it, Rust was nowhere near the front of the net. Or he was more so, I believe he was at like where the faceoff dot is. That's where Rust was, if you actually take a close look at it. And he like strides forward and targets Besser and then just kind of like clips him. And then, of course, with the Raquel shot as well. And then, as I mentioned, Rust falls to the ice afterwards. Originally, I thought that was maybe his momentum. And like he really like leaned into the elbow. But having, watched it multiple times and gone over it, it looks as though Rust actually trips over Skinner's stick. So you can dispel that whole momentum thing, by looking at, him tripping over Skinner's stick and then falling to the ice. And then, of course, you see Elias Paterson kind of like skate over to him and apparently say something to him. It's like, PD, what the fuck is that going to do? Like, stand up for your teammate, man. But we're actually really going to dive into this whole, toughness, the team not doing anything to, not stand up for Besser. We're going to be talking about that way later. I'm going to do another live stream, and we're just going to vent and just talk about the lack of toughness on this team. So, and then, of course, we had this as well. Like we mentioned earlier, Bouillon being out a week or two after taking a puck to the face, as mentioned by Darren Dreger, who made an appearance on Sekeres and Price earlier this morning, talking about the Besser injury, the Bouillon injury as well, basically saying he's hearing that he's going to be out at least a week or two. So, which absolutely sucks because, Bouillon, he's great, and he's scored that goal, like, what was it, a few games ago, and I thought he was, yes, he had his rookie or young player mistakes, but I thought he was playing all right, and obviously that's going to be a bit of a blow not having him in the lineup, but injuries happen, and it just sucks that it's coming at a time when considering where the Canucks are right now. So got about 20 more minutes before Jeff shows up. I'm going to take a look at some of your comments, see who's all here. So obviously I know Irvin was already here. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. I have my questions loaded. Just a heads up, guys, if you do have questions for Jeff, I will do my best to try and get to them. I'm not sure how long Jeff will be able to, stick around. So I will do my best to try and, give you guys the floor so you guys can ask him some stuff. But I do have a jam-packed bunch of notes and topics to go over with Jeff. So just keep that in mind. My name Jeff. My name Hef. Okay, we got KJ Green in here. What's up, buddy? Ogren, PD Lek. Maybe PD can be the quote-unquote Oslin for that dynamic pre-draft Swedish trio. At least give it the last 30 games to try it. Nothing to lose, everything to gain. Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that line, actually. Ogren, PD, and Lekaramaki. Definitely try it. Especially Lekaramaki and Ogren. We know they have chemistry from the past, and I've been saying since we acquired Ogren that, they should have those two together. And actually, I believe it was Brandon Astle, actually, because I suggested sending Ogren down to Abbey to play with Lekaramaki, and he's like, I think it's more likely they play together up on the big club, in Vancouver, not Abbotsford. So he hit the nail right on the head there. We have Isildur Tankashire. Now watch him get the number 3 pick with the best odds at first. yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the next report earlier today. Great article written by our friend Dave Hall. I definitely highly recommend you guys go and check that out. It's a great read. I absolutely loved reading it. And hey, like I mentioned in that video, I'm absolutely looking forward to having Dave on again, like closer towards the draft. We'll like completely go over the draft, and who knows, maybe some things will have changed by then when it comes to the draft. Was last minute. Only offensive players on the ice for the Canucks. Doesn't take away from our need for an enforcer, but kind of explains why, pushback. I have seen that as well. The fact that it was the end of the game. I think someone said, like, why didn't O'Connor do something? He's fought before, but, looking at the video, O'Connor was like right at the front of the net, and he actually got taken down, at the very end. So there was no way he could have seen what happened to Besser at all. But one person did see it. That was Elias Paterson, and he did fuck all. So, especially with a young rebuilding team, we need someone to protect this team. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had someone like that. His name was Nikita Zadorov, but he's no longer here. We also had a guy like that in Ian Cole. Also kind of makes you wonder, would there have been a response if Sherwood was still on the team? But we've also seen this when Sherwood was still on the team, and there was still no, pushback. So I guess who knows? Also was quite the melee in front. Possibly nobody on the ice saw. Yep, a lot of people have been saying that. That was the time where Kane should have stepped up. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And you would think Kane would be one of the first, but I guess not. Hate to see any headshot though. Yeah, totally. Especially considering Besser having already dealt with one of those, like literally a year ago. And then plus us just getting Filipino back too. So William not able to see today that eye cheek was swelling fast. Yeah, with that picture that I saw, I think it was in that video that Sakaris and Price did, and where they had Darren Drager on. They had like a full picture of his face with the fishbowl full face shield, and you could see how swollen his eye was at that point. I can only imagine it's like freaking like this now. It's like a giant goose egg on his face. Stain Solberg, number 17 pick last year. Ducks supposed to be tough, and let's look at Belchet's Malhotra comparison for upside grade. Yeah, I've heard Belchet's is very tough, at least from what Dave Hall mentioned when we briefly spoke about him. So, might not. Hey, Isildur and KG. Hi, Swerver. Swervin. Isildur. Oh, Russell's in the house. What's up, brother? Nikita, yeah, that's a tank commander that likes war. Yeah. Took me over 4 years to get back to work after a TBI. Yikes. Yeah, this was what I was thinking as well, Irvin. There was no retribution towards Jason Dickinson. I mean, I think Adam Foote kind of nipped that in the butt. I don't think he should have. I think he should have been like, who freaking cares? Just get the retribution. I mean, look at how much time that Edel missed because of it. No, and Marchment would have been the plug we needed. Yeah. I mean, hey, if we had Mason Marchment on this team, that wouldn't have happened. Well, it would have happened, but he would have, probably decked freaking Rust. Pick a plug. All right, Robo. 15 minutes away from Jeff. So Yeah, I just want, like I said, I just wanted to, uh, start off a little earlier, just to talk about, those updates with Besser and Bouya. And also, in about, I'm going to say 10 minutes or so, I'm going to do my sponsor read so I can, get that out of the way. And then we can have more time with Jeff. As like I said, I got a bunch of notes. I got a bunch of topics I want to talk to him about, including what we're literally talking about now. I want to talk to him about that as well. So we're going to be going over that. Jeff be tweeting. Yeah, I saw that. I still maintain that if a guy suffers a concussion, the suspended player should miss the equal amount of time. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I originally said 5 games, but actually, speak of the devil, Alfred said that was maybe a little harsh, which he's absolutely correct. That is a little harsh, but that was just my instant reaction to having actually seen the actual highlights of the hit or the replay. I do think Russ is going to get at least 3 games. At least that's just my take on it. But I don't see it being less than 3. I mean, at minimum, probably maybe 2, but I think he definitely deserves at least 3 for that. I did see a lot on social media about people trying to not necessarily defend Rust, but basically, saying, Russ did apologize to Besser, which he did. Apparently, I mean, I didn't see it, but apparently he did apologize about it. But at the same time, you kind of leaned in with your elbow. Seemed like you intended to do it. So a concussion is what, 2 weeks minimum for the hurt player. Suspensions just start there. Yeah, I guess it depends on the severity of the concussion. I know I've had a few myself, honestly, and they absolutely suck. But yeah, I mean, 2 weeks I think is probably a pretty good, maybe a week to 2 weeks minimum. Again, depends on the severity of the hit to the head and I guess the place, and I guess it also depends on the player too. Like I imagine it's probably longer than 2 weeks if it were, say, someone who has concussion history, like Heedle, for example. I mean, just look at how much time that Heedle missed, and that wasn't necessarily a full-on, hit to the head. It was just really bad, like whiplash when he, fell to the ice. So, given Russ has never been suspended in his entire NHL career, don't expect this suspension to be less than 2 games. Yeah, definitely. I think the minimum has to be 2 at this rate. I would be shocked if he only got 1 game. Then again, at the same time, I also kind of wouldn't be shocked because player safety hasn't exactly, been up to snuff as of late. So, and I've been very critical of player safety as of late. That's hard, KG. What if teams fake concussions to keep star players out? Good point. What about violent acts that luckily don't result in concussions? Remember when Calgary was with the Leafs and headhunted Henrik Sedin? So violent. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Cap circumvention, sure, too bad. Besser wasn't injured in September. Looking back, it would have been a blessing, perhaps a waiver player or reps to shot Baines. 1 game minimum, and if a player that was hurt plays the following game, then the suspension stays 1 day. Also, don't forget, this is not the only time Besser was hit in his head. Yeah, we talked about that, happening last season with Jeannot. And as Alfred mentioned to me and reminded me, Tanner Jeannot actually got 3 games for his illegal check to the head last year. So I don't see Russ getting anything different, or getting basically the same thing, considering, Jeannot wasn't a repeat offender. And, I think he had some, Alfred mentioned some like kneeing incident or something like that. So He wasn't a repeat offender. Yeah, poor Besser, so many injuries in all different body parts. Yeah. George Peros is a joke to player safety to begin with. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The fact that he was a, enforcer back in the day and a tough guy back in the day, you would think he would be perfect for this job, for this role. But no, he's an absolute joke. And honestly, in my opinion, he should be fired. Like, he doesn't belong. He doesn't deserve to be running player safety because clearly he doesn't care. Operation Dummy the Poor Kid. He luckily missed Henrik and belted his own teammate. Hedel and Besser. May fake a concussion. Trust me, ain't nobody want to try that. Then they'd have to miss time also. Benefit. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what their benefits are like. So, yeah. Maybe Mark Stone. I don't see anyone else trying that. Yeah. Isn't it about time that Mark Stone gets, penalized for embellishing like an injury, considering he's constantly injured, like around I'd say this time or closer towards the playoffs, he's, magically has an injury and he's out, and then he magically comes back for the playoffs. I mean, hopefully the NHL has cracked down on that. So LTIR and ice fishing. That's good. Sure, but if it were the playoffs, I bet Minnesota would sacrifice a fourth liner if Renton had to stay out of the lineup. Or Makar with Colorado. LTR and ice fishing. Right on Bufflin. I remember him. Bufflin. Dustin Bufflin. I used to call him Bifuglian when he played because I absolutely hated Bufflin when he was on the Blackhawks. Absolutely hated him. Stone didn't need to this year after Pietrangelo retired. Fair, yeah. That's actually a really good point. Miss Jan Love went out on your terms. Kucherov skipped the entire 2021 season, came back to help the Lightning win a cup. Yeah, I remember that. All right, in 2 minutes, I'm going to do my sponsor read. And then at, like I said, 4 o'clock, we'll be joined by JPAT for the second time. Last time I had JPAT on was back in July, or the end of July. And so it's been a while since I talked to Jeff, and it's going to be great to talk to him, considering the last time we talked was, before the season even started. And so much has happened between then and now. And trust me, I'm going to ask JPAT about it, and his thoughts on, like, if he, saw back then that the Canucks would be in the position that they're in right now. Biff Ugly. Paid in full. Calling him Bifuglian or Bifugly and helps. Yeah, Bifuglian helps remember the spelling. That's actually a really good point. And yeah, bit buff, or unless you meant big buff. What, Buff Bagwell? Facts. All right, good to see a bunch of you all in here. 54 total between X and YouTube. That's awesome. Glad you guys could come out. Hopefully I'll be getting some more guests on over the next few weeks. I've been, out looking for new guests. So Although I'm not quite sure if I'll be able to top Rick Dollywall. Who knows? Maybe I'll see if I can get Rick back on again. So, big buff lesbian. Whoa! Careful now, Irv. This isn't After Dark Unleashed. Gee, Besser just can't get a break from injuries. Yeah. I got a blast. I'm doing mushrooms. All right. Thanks for popping by, KJ or KG Green. Good to see you, buddy. Two-handed ragdoll, two different players like sacks of flour at once. Besser is starting to be like Glass. Yeah. The injuries are kind of starting to pile up a little bit. By the way, let me know in the chat real quick. What have you guys thought of the recent videos that I've done? I've been using an AI feature that's in the YouTube Studio that helps with like coming up with like thumbnail titles, video titles, that are like engaging and hooked and hook people. That hook people in, as well as like ideas for the thumbnail itself. So like probably the last 4, maybe 5 videos I've done. I've used that feature. Let me know what you guys think, because it seems like they are working. All right, I'm going to quickly do my mid-show sponsor read, and then hopefully once we return from the sponsor read, we'll be joined by JPAT. So first, I want to start off by thanking my main and primary sponsor, none other than DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Never experienced the jaw-dropping moments that make hockey? Well, you can experience them all with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Missouri listeners, listen up. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in the Show Me State. New customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN, that's code THPN, to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-9777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Pass-through per wager may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. This is a limited time offer. Copyright NHL 2025. All rights reserved. All right. We welcome back to the podcast none other than Canucks beat reporter, Canucks Army senior writer, correspondent on Scarce and Price, Canucks Conversation, and co-host of Rink Vancouver, which I got to see live and in person recently over at Greta a few weeks ago. None other than the legend himself, Jeff Paterson, also known as JPat. How's it going, Jeff?
Yeah, it's going good. How are you?
I'm doing not bad. Good to have you back on the podcast. Thanks again for taking the time. I know you're a very busy man with everything you do, so I appreciate you giving us a bit of your time. I am rocking the JT Miller jersey, just clarifying. I'm the someone in the JT Miller jersey from Rinkwide a couple of weeks ago. I actually had some friends actually message me, who watched the show and asked me, did JPat just mention you on Rinkwide playing air hockey? I was like, what? No. Then I watched it myself and realized it was, yeah, that's me. So I got quite the chuckle out of that.
There you go. You play a mean game of air hockey.
Quads technically beat me, so.
No.
But I did, like I said, I kept my composure, so at least there's that. But now the last time we had you on was during the summer, before the season started. Did you think back then that here in January, the Canucks would be in a hybrid rebuild, retool in a hybrid form, and now just simply a rebuild?
No, I have taken the L on this one repeatedly. I pegged them to have 96 points and said they would be right there on the cusp of the playoffs, and that a couple of things would have to go their way down the stretch. But no, I had them in the mid 90s, and here we sit with 39 points, or they sit with 39 points and 30 games to go. You can start to do hockey math, and yikes! Yeah, it has gone so far sideways. Even in my wildest dreams, I didn't think that they would sink to the levels that they have as quickly as they have, and have it be as bleak as it's been for so much of this season. And the other crazy part in all of that is that if you think back to the 20-game mark, they were 9-9-2. They were a 500 or NHL 500 hockey club at the 20-game mark, and here they are now 52 games in, and they can barely see the teams that are in front of them. I mean, that's the gap that has been built, or that's how far behind the chase pack they've fallen here. So it's wild. A couple years ago, Jim Rutherford said if everything goes right, they can be a playoff team. Well, this year, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and then some, and that is why they sit where they sit in the NHL standings.
Mm-hmm. On that note, did you think back then that Quinn Hughes would be gone? Kiefer Sherwood would be gone. The Canucks would be dead last in the league, looking to both the draft lottery as well as the draft guaranteed, pending if they remain at the bottom of the standings, that they'd at least be getting a top 3 pick in the draft.
I guess my gut told me that Quinn wasn't likely to re-sign here long-term, but I sort of bought into this notion that this was all about win for Quinn and try to prove to him that this team could be competitive at the very least. Did I expect a pre-Christmas trade? No, not at all. I thought, if he had given the hockey club an indication, a firm indication, then maybe by the trade deadline, or, if it became evidently clear ahead of his window to sign an extension, that maybe we'd see a trade around the draft or something like that. But for it to happen as quickly as it did 31 games into the season, that caught me off guard. And I think most people that cover this hockey club and follow this league pretty closely, that you don't see superstars get traded all that often, and certainly not that early in the season when there weren't a whole lot of other trades happening in the National Hockey League. And late on a Friday afternoon, and Bill Guerin making his meatballs, and hey, things happen. You can never control the timing of these types of things. Canucks got the offer that they were looking for, I suppose, and had been backed into a corner. So, it's unfortunate that the trade ever had to happen in the first place. But now we see star players control their shots more and more now in the National Hockey League, and it just became clear that Quinn, whether it was a combination of the surroundings here, whether it had anything to do with wanting to be back on that side of the border. We knew that he wanted to go east. He didn't really get his wish that much. I mean, he went further east than here, but kind of in middle America. And the Kiefer Sherwood thing as well. I mean, Kiefer Sherwood's the kind of player that a team at this stage of its competitive arc should want. A guy that shows up, plays hard, has, more offense than I think he's ever been given credit for. Low maintenance, good guy in the room, all that kind of stuff. And yet they can't afford to keep him. And so basically Canucks were boxed in twice. It's frustrating. It's frustrating that it got to this for this hockey club that 2 seasons ago was 1 win away from a trip to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Crap, and I just lost my thought there for a quick sec, but it's okay. We'll move on. We talked a little bit about Besser and Rust, the incident after the game yesterday, briefly before you came on. What are your thoughts on it, and has there been anything new on Besser's condition since earlier today?
Other than the Canucks have placed him on IR, and so we won't see him for at least a week. And with only 5 games to go before the Olympic break, I would suspect that we don't see Brock Besser now until after the Olympic break. So clearly he's injured, and that's unfortunate. This is a guy that was on the receiving end of a cheap shot from Tanner Jeannot a year ago. I think he missed 7 games then. This time he's doing his job, parked in front of the net, and I get it's desperation, and Brian Rust's sort of MO was just to eliminate the opposition and do whatever he could to prevent the Canucks from scoring the tying goal. But in saying that, there are rules to this game. And, he very clearly clips Besser in the head with an elbow, didn't try to hide it. I don't think of Brian Rust as that kind of player, but his actions speak for themselves there. So hoping the best for Brock. Hope that, repeated concussions, if that's what it is, we have seen that has kept players out for a while. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. The Canucks had the day off Monday. Other than placing him on IR, they haven't provided any sort of medical update. But it's disappointing. It's been a disappointing season for him. Lost his dog earlier in the year. Had to take the personal leave then. Obviously, the goal-scoring drought that he's had to endure here. And now as he's found his touch a little bit with the 3 goals in 5 games prior to Sunday, now I don't think we'll see him until after the Olympics. So that's unfortunate. I'm glad the league stepped in. The league doesn't always get these things right. The fact that they are going to hold a hearing with Brian Rust on Tuesday morning. And I would think that, that meets all the criteria for supplemental discipline. Go out of your way, target a guy, headshot, injury, all those things. The league has to protect its players. And it doesn't always do it. But I think in this case, Brian Rust is probably going to sit for I would think a handful of games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm thinking maybe 3 at least minimum. Staying on the Besser topic, though, I caught some of Donnie and Dolly earlier, and they spoke candidly about how this team is not tough, and fans have been saying it for some time now. This team lacks toughness, doesn't stand up for their teammates. Dolly actually seemed pretty hot about it, while Don was trying to play, devil's advocate about it. Obviously, if you still have guys like Zadorov or even Ian Cole on this team, do you think something like that happens and one of those guys would not let that go unpunished? You kind of answered the last part, on how many games Russ might get. But do you think if they had like a tough guy on the team, there would be some pushback?
I want to come at this from a bunch of different ways. One is it's the dying seconds of a hockey game. The Canucks are trying to score the equalizer. They have Elias Paterson, Linus Karlsson, Drew O'Connor, Brock Besser, Philip Hronek, and Zeev Buium on the ice. Those are the 6 guys that are on the ice. Besser's down. From the other 5, you tell me, who would you expect would step in that moment? I guess Philip Hronek would be the sort of toughest of the bunch. Zeev Buium, as we found out, was playing with an injury that's now going to keep him out of the lineup as well. That's another issue. But, Paterson and Karlsson, they're not going to drop the gloves and fight Brian Rust and Drew O'Connor, former teammate. The other part is, it's a fast game, and it's chaos in front of the net. Honestly, I don't know how many Canucks would have seen in real time what happened other than Besser hits the deck and, is shaken up. So that's not to excuse the guys on the ice. You can still get in a guy's face and some pushback and all that kind of stuff. But, the final buzzer, it's another loss for the Canucks. They're disheartened and demoralized, all that kind of stuff that, I didn't really expect much from them because they're just not built that way. And I get the frustration. I hear it all the time. I get it in my mentions. People they want some sort of deterrent on this team. And that was part of the reason for bringing Evander Kane in. He hasn't really played that role for the Canucks, but it can't always just be Evander Kane. If we hear about team toughness, there have got to be a few other guys that are willing to step up and step in. But again, it comes in the final buzzer. So there was no chance. If you had Zadorov and if you had 10 heavyweights, they're probably sitting on the bench. There's nothing they can do at that point. They're not coming off the bench to engage in a fight. That's massive suspensions in today's NHL. So, it's situational, and I think you have to keep that in mind. But through it all, hockey is a tough, rugged contact sport, and I think it's a fair criticism of this organization for a while now. The way it's constructed, the way that it is built, the players that they have on the roster, they could absolutely use a few more guys that are willing to do some of the heavy lifting. You look around the league, there are still players. Fights are way down. I get that. And I'm not talking about necessarily fighting, but there's always going to be an intimidation factor, whether it's a Zadorov who has that presence. Tom Wilson came through town the other day. There were big boys in this National Hockey League, and then the Canucks have made a concerted effort to build their roster way more around skill than around will, and yet the skill hasn't really shown up much this season. And so, I hear the frustrations, and I understand where people are coming from. with the way that this roster is constructed.
For sure. I'll admit, when I first saw that replay and the angle from behind the net, which I thought was a fantastic angle to really actually show you, and I saw Russ fall to the ice afterwards, I was like, he seemed to have a little bit of momentum as he elbowed Besser, so he kind of charged in, because I believe he was at the face-off dot originally and then came, swooping in. But then I noticed he actually tripped over, I believe it was Skinner's stick, so that's why he fell to the ice. So I guess we can kind of, throw that out, because originally when you first look at it, you just see him fall. You're like, oh, he built some momentum and really clocked Besser. But and then you see, I'm hearing Elias Paterson apparently skated over to him, talked to him. It's definitely a scenario where you should probably stand up. But then again, you're not expecting PD to do anything. It's PD. So, but yeah, I completely agree with you. 100%.
Well, hey, if PD talked to him, then it's settled. There we go. If Elias Pettersson had stern words for Brian Rust, then justice has been meted out sufficiently. Again, I go back to the guys that were on the ice, just not really in their job description, and people can say get outside your comfort zone. I don't know, but to your point, now as we watch the replays, we know what to look for in real time. It's bodies flying all over the place and sticks and whatever. Honestly, I wasn't sure what had happened until I saw a replay. And so that's why I go back. I mean, the players are focused on the puck. They're trying to find the equalizer. I would think some of them weren't even sure exactly what happened. But, in the light of day, when you see the replay, it's pretty clear that Brian Rust is basically trying to eliminate Brock Besser from that play. And he was effective, I guess, in doing it. But, it's going to come at a cost now for both of them.
Yeah. And we were talking about O'Connor being on the ice. I believe he was down on the ice, so his back was completely turned to Besser, so he couldn't have seen anything. And it looked like he was getting dogpiled a little bit too there. I believe I heard Jake DeBrusk said that he didn't actually see it. I believe DeBrusk was on the bench. So, but you heard some of the players, like Bluger, DeBrusk, and even Adam Foote kind of, say yeah, it was a headshot. It was unfortunate. I did hear that Rust apparently apologized to Besser, so at least there's that. Shows you that he's not, that type of player like people are saying. But it's like you said, it's very unfortunate. And then even the thing with Bouillon, taking a puck to the face, and then leaving. What was it in the second period, and then in the first period, and then coming back in the second period with the full face shield. It even looked like I saw the clip with Darren Dreger, talking about Bouillon, and you could see in that frame, that picture, he was sporting quite the black eye. So I can only imagine it's even more swollen than it was yesterday. And the fact that he's now on IR tells you that maybe they shouldn't have let him come back out and played. I know some people have kind of questioned that. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Hockey players are tough guys, and I think they want to get back and help their team. And so, without being in the locker room and seeing the medical charts and those types of things, my hunch is that Bouillon thought, I'm okay, just give me the face protection and I'll get back out there. But after the game, clearly they must have done some imaging and x-rays and found, and we don't know yet. The club hasn't said other than putting him on IR. So is it an orbital bone? Is it a cheekbone? What is it? A nose? Who knows? But there's been some damage here that's put him on IR. And again, I would think just with the Olympic break, why would you rush anybody back at this stage of a lost season? So I can't imagine that we'll see Bouillon over these next 5 games up until the Olympic break. But I do think it is fair to question. I mean, the medical staff for the Vancouver Canucks doesn't really get the benefit of the doubt. Over the last bunch of years, we've seen too many instances where you have wondered about the care and the attention that these guys get. And so to find out after the fact that, there was a significant injury, he goes back and plays, doesn't play particularly well. He didn't look good on the first or the third Pittsburgh goals, after scoring the beautiful goal against Jersey on Friday night. So, I think in the moment when I see the mistakes that he makes, he pinches on the first one, and then gets beaten at the blue line on the 3-0 goal. And you're thinking, come on, it's the NHL. I know you're a young defenseman, but you got to do better than that. But then we find out that the guy's playing through, a significant enough injury that he winds up on IR. So, yeah, I think it is fair to question, and I think those questions will be asked. Again, it was a day off on Monday, so no media access to players or coaches. But I would think it's a fair question to ask Adam Foote or somebody else in the organization, like, why exactly was he allowed back in the game, especially with where they are in the standings? If they're fighting for their playoff lives, even then you still ask the question, but it's a little more understandable. The minute anybody is injured on this team right now in 30-second spot, just get them out of there and make sure that there's not further damage done and long-term damage and those types of things. So, yeah, it's a curious case to say the least, and it's unfortunate that it's played out this way, and most unfortunate for Zeev William, who needs NHL reps, and he's going to miss some time now, and that doesn't help him, and it certainly doesn't help the hockey club.
For sure. I know tomorrow they're playing the Sharks. I was doing my scrolling, and it's looking like potentially Sherwood might be playing tomorrow. I know he practiced a little bit, did a little skating. Quick turnaround, like a week later or a week prior, he gets traded, and then potentially we were saying like maybe a week ago, maybe we don't think he might be able to make it, be able to play. And then it looks like there's a good chance Sherwood could be playing tomorrow. So that's a quick turnaround for someone who was just traded, coming back to Rogers Arena a week after being traded. How do you think his reception is going to be if he does indeed end up playing?
Yeah, I'm curious. The Sharks haven't played since Friday night. I've seen the same videos that he's been skating, but he was skating here before the trade as well. He's got a hand injury, and the day of the trade when I talked to him, he didn't think that he would be ready to go, but he didn't rule it out entirely. A week has passed, and maybe he's a quick healer. Whatever the case, I would think for the Sharks, they don't want to rush him into anything, that they want him after the Olympic break and down the stretch, and they're above the playoff bar right now. And so, he's going to help them whenever he gets in the lineup. Selfishly, I hope he plays here. I think it would be a great story. I think he'd get a massive ovation and response from the crowd here. He talked about how, as a late bloomer and a guy that really came into his own in Vancouver, one of his lasting memories of his time here is going to be the crowd chanting his name. That just doesn't happen to, fourth line guys as he was to start here. And so he said he's going to take that with him. I would think you would see the crowd chant his name one more time and sort of give him a welcome back and a send off all the same. Again, he was the kind of guy that the Canucks should have won in their locker room. I understand the circumstances, and they had to trade him, just given where they are and the fact that they were able to get 2 seconds in return. But they're going to miss him. I mean, this is a guy that I don't think took a night off in his time as a Vancouver Canuck, and we can't say that about everybody in that locker room. But he showed up. He was consistent. He played hard. He was hard to play against. We talked about the goal scoring. And it's unfortunate that he got hurt, I guess, the game in Toronto. He hasn't played a game since January the 10th. So we'll watch the morning skate for the Sharks and see if he has a line to skate on. If he does, then he's probably playing. I'm still leaning towards him not being available for this one. But again, fingers crossed that it can happen, because I think it would be a great scene at Rogers Arena.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I remember back when they were playing Nashville in the playoffs, and, just hearing Quinn Hughes talk about him saying, like, I don't want to play against this guy. Get this guy over here. And just the fact that, that was a massive win for the organization to sign him to the deal that they signed him to, what was it, $1.5 million? Such a cheap deal. And then for him to perform the way that he did, I think he definitely left a lasting impression on this team, on this fan base. And he's definitely going to be missed. But I was actually on a Sharks podcast, I think it was a week ago, like the few days after the trade, just talking about it, telling them about Sherwood. And I basically said, you guys are getting one heck of a player, and you guys are going to absolutely love this guy, especially with all the young talent that the Sharks have as well. So, definitely someone who the Canucks are definitely going to be missing for sure. And it sucks that we were not able to, maybe if he was a little bit younger, we could have maybe re-signed him, but, that's just hockey. Yeah.
And, at that price point, as you said, they got everything out of Kiefer Sherwood. Talk about getting your money's worth out of a player for a year and a half, leads the league in hits, 19 goals last year, 17 this year, and now unable to add to that total, but he should still be able to push 25 for the season, given the way the Sharks score and depending where they put him in the lineup. And he's got versatility that we saw here, that he can play up the lineup on occasion. I don't think that they're going to put him with Macklin Celebrini, but if they do, skates well enough that he can probably hang there in that situation. And if he does, then the points are going to flow his way. So, kind of curious to see. I'll be watching closely. The Sharks are in a dogfight, obviously. Seattle's there. Los Angeles is there. I think they're all tied on 55 points right now, but the Sharks are above the playoff bar. Can they stay there? They made the trade, I think, to reward their players that they recognize. Maybe they're a little bit ahead of schedule. Do they make another trade? They've got a playoff spot right now, but they're not guaranteed to stay in it. So I'm going to be watching down the stretch and really curious to sort of see where Kiefer Sherwood settles in and what kind of role he plays for the San Jose Sharks.
For sure. I did a video earlier today because I saw news coming out that Seattle Kraken are maybe looking to shop Shane Wright or looking to move off of Shane Wright. And I believe it was an article on Canucks Army talking about how the Canucks could potentially be interested. What are your thoughts on, the Canucks looking at Wright? I know we're technically in a rebuild right now, so we're not really buying. But I do like the dynamic that Wright possesses. He is a center, and it's something that this team lacks and could really use. Your thoughts on Shane Wright and the potential for a possible, trade, or the Canucks looking at him?
Yeah, I mean, Jim Rutherford has said repeatedly that they want players that are under 25 years of age. So Shane Wright checks that box. Guy's got incredible speed. We know that for his draft year, he was pegged to go first overall and ultimately sat there. We all remember the camera shots of him on draft day as he went fourth. Hasn't panned out, but lots of guys take their time to sort of find their way at the National Hockey League level. The times I've watched him, I mean, the speed is noticeable, and in a league that's getting faster all the time, he holds up his end of the bargain in that regard. In terms of his usage in Seattle, and he's had to go through a bunch of head coaches down there. That's a tough situation for a young player. So, should the Canucks be interested? Sure. I think Seattle ultimately is going to be looking to go young player for young player. Again, this is a top 5 draft pick. They're giving up on him if they make the trade, but they're going to want to replace him with somebody that can settle into that same sort of mold at the very least. And, if you're the Canucks, they've got some prospects, but I don't know that they've got what the I've seen a lot of people, Connor Garland in a draft pick for Shane. I don't think Kraken are looking for that kind of trade. I mean, why would they want a guy that's, 30 years old at this stage? They're scuffling along, and I say that they're just on the cusp of the playoff spot, but I think they would want to get somebody in return that probably has a little bit of name value. They're lacking that star power down there in Seattle. They don't score a ton of goals. They've relied a lot on goaltending this season. So, again, I wouldn't say it can't happen. And I think it would be kind of cool to see the Canucks and the Kraken hook up on a significant trade like that. I mean, I want to see this rivalry get juiced a little bit, but where the Canucks are in the standings, I think that's going to take a while. So I'm not sitting here counting down the minutes until the Canucks release a press statement that says they've acquired Shane Wright. I don't think it's going to add up to happen. But again, I think it's the kind of player that, absolutely. When you hear that sort of player is on the trade block, that, you should be kicking tires if you're in the position that the Vancouver Canucks are in.
For sure. I noticed Winnipeg might be a potential suitor. I think there was talk about Cole Perfetti.
Right.
I definitely do think the Canucks would be outbid if other teams, because they're not exactly flushed with young assets, at least that they'd be willing to part ways with. Keep in mind, the Canucks are in a rebuild. They want to keep on to those guys for the rebuild. So, like you said, I would be ecstatic for a guy like Wright. I think he could use a change of scenery, but, the realistically, I don't think the Canucks would be able to pull it off. But I did want to talk about something else. I did notice at the most recent watch party, they obviously had those two guys that with the hockey stick mic. I saw those videos on social media the other day. I actually managed to find them, and talking about a captain, also the Stenberg or McKenna. More so the captain one. I've noticed recently, because I also just did a video on it, I believe the other day. What do you think about? I know you said you weren't thinking about anyone right now because there's not really anyone on the team, but I've noticed Filip Hronek's name mentioned quite a bit, and we've also seen him actually talk in the media a bit more than what he would normally do, because normally he wouldn't do media. Your thoughts on potentially Filip Hronek maybe being groomed to being the next captain? I know they did that video package, talking about him and his leadership. Had a lot of the players talk about him, sing his praises, basically. Your thoughts on, that being like a possibility, down the line?
Yeah, down the line to me is the important part here. I'm in no rush whatsoever to name a captain, certainly for the remainder of this year. Just leave it be and continue to sink to the bottom of the standings and do the best to, up your draft lottery odds. Next year, I mean, it's funny because Phil Hronek, obviously he and I had our little run-in a couple of years ago. People still bring that up. I have no issues with Phil Hronek whatsoever. I didn't think he tried very hard to answer my questions, and I got a little frustrated, and clearly he got frustrated. Whatever. To me, it was one-off and it was done. We respect his requests as a media collective on a regular basis that, people don't go out of their way to try to speak to him. He has created this sort of bubble for himself that, is strange in a hockey market like Vancouver, but he's made it abundantly clear that that's just not something that he wants to do on any kind of regular basis. Now, we saw him post-game against Washington, and people were like, Filip Hronek did media. Well, he scored the game-winning goal, and they broke an 11-game losing streak. So it was significant on a couple of fronts. It made sense that he was requested and that he stood in there. And as you point out, like inside the locker room, he is highly regarded as a leader. I think he's, got a fair bit of personality that he just chooses not to show publicly, and that's his decision. But on the ice, I mean, it's undisputable. He is the team MVP. He's been remarkably consistent. He's probably been better without Quinn Hughes than he was with Quinn Hughes, and the two of them together formed an incredible duo. So, I think there are a lot of boxes that he checks for a captain in the National Hockey League. He's a veteran guy now. He's got the experience. He leads by example, shows up. He's durable. He's there on a regular basis. And I have also said that in this market, I just don't think that, doing the media thing on a regular basis is really that big a deal anymore. That we see it when the Canucks go on the road on a lot of trips now. The only reporter is the team reporter, that there isn't a lot of independent media. The cost is just too significant now to send people out on the road for every road trip. So there isn't that much demand ultimately to do the media thing, to speak post-game. And even when Quinn was here, like it wasn't like Quinn was asked for every single day at practice and every post-game. The staff behind the scenes works pretty hard to make sure that, these guys aren't overburdened by repeated requests. And so, when I look at, I think a lot of people say, hey, well, you need a captain in a Canadian market to be a good spokesperson. I think that's way down the list now. I think the importance of that, and I think Filip Hronek could handle it if he wanted to. Like, I think, my sense is that he's created this caricature sort of himself that, big bad Phil Hronek that nobody wants to go near with a microphone. But the times that he does it, he can handle it just fine. He just chooses not to want to engage an awful lot. But I think if he was named captain, he'd have to do a little bit more of it. But I don't think that part would be a big deal. So when I look at who else in that locker room right now, I don't see a lot of good candidates. So I think of the existing players on the roster, he would be right up there at the top. Now, as they reshape the roster, as they bring more players in, somewhere down the line, Braden Coots kind of profiles as a guy that could be captain material, but certainly not at this stage of his hockey career. We're not going to go down that road just yet. So maybe he's the next captain of the Vancouver Canucks. Who knows? But not for the rest of this season. And then if they want to make a decision and put a C on Filip Hronek for next year, I think that'd be fine. I think, again, you're going to be judged more by what you do than by what you say.
For sure. Yeah, I originally, I think in one of those videos, I said Brock Besser, but that was like the first name that came to my head. I've also thought of Garland as well. I've seen how Garland's, you've seen a lot of times that after, whether it's a win or a loss, you see Garland, like the last guy to leave the ice, fist bumping, hugging, and stuff like that. So I think he's a good candidate for sure. But I totally agree. There's no rush to find a captain. It's not necessary. They can literally go the rest of the season, maybe even well into next season without having one. It's not a priority right now. It's, all about, the rebuild and, obviously the draft coming up. So I did want to ask you about crud. I just lost it. Well, speaking of the draft, your thoughts on I've heard Caleb Malholtra's name a lot as of late, and actually a friend of mine actually brought him to my attention. I didn't even know he was Manny's son until I looked into him. Your thoughts on Caleb, and should he be someone that the Canucks should maybe take a peek at?
Well, not with the first overall pick. I think he's in the next tier at this stage, but he's going to get drafted probably in the top 10. I don't know that it's in Caleb's best interest to be brought into the fold with his dad in the organization. To me, that feels like some needless pressure on a young guy. And while I'm sure the family would love it, most guys in the NHL don't get to play for their father. So, it'd be a rarity, certainly. I just think Caleb's got to keep doing what he's doing. He's having a heck of a season in the OHL, and his draft stock. We know all about Manny and the family. Like, he's a good kid, a good person, and a good hockey player. And somebody's going to get themselves a nice pick with Caleb Malhotra. But it looks like the Canucks are going to finish last, which guarantees a top 3 pick. And I just don't think that Caleb Malhotra is going to be one of the first 3 guys off the board, given what we know about the prospects and the names that are out there at the top of most boards at this stage. So, crazier things have happened with teams trading down, or, teams identifying guys that they absolutely want and then making moves. So, never say never around the draft. I was there the day that Brian Burke wheeled and dealed to get the Sedins. Like, things can happen on the draft floor, but if the Canucks do wind up with one of the top 3 picks, to me, it seems like really right now it's basically 4 guys, and I think we all know the names, and it's just a question of where the Canucks ultimately are slotted and who's available. If they don't pick first, who's off the board by the time they are on the clock.
Sure. Last thing I wanted to talk to you about, a lot of people have been talking about it. I actually recently did a video about it as well. And, we actually heard from his agent recently, maybe trying to, fan the Flames, at least trying to, but perhaps he may have just fueled them even more. I'm obviously talking about Elias Paterson and his agent, JP Barry, trying to shut down the rumors or the trade rumors. Your thoughts on Barry commenting on that? And, do you think he may have added fuel to the fire with not really, confirming, Paterson isn't going anywhere. He kind of left the door open for it. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what was his quote? 9 out of 10 times these rumors go nowhere, I think, which leaves 1 out of 10 times that maybe there's something there. I didn't think he, certainly wasn't a flat out denial that nothing's going to happen. And where Philip Peronik's agent has come out and said, this is nonsense. Quit talking about it. My client's not going anywhere. Doesn't want to go anywhere. My sense all along here has been that there isn't a team in the NHL that would look at Elias Pettersson right now and say, that's a guy that we need to add ahead of the playoffs. That, his downfall really started 2 years ago around this time. He wasn't productive down the stretch. Even in the playoffs, he had just 1 goal. So I can't think that there's a team that thinks, that's the missing piece that we want to go all in and, take on the rest of that contract and everything else to get this player. I think it's more kind of trade that will happen in the summer where teams look and think that it's pretty thin free agent crop. and that, there's 2 years burned off the deal. There's still 6 left, but with a rising salary cap, maybe it's palatable. I do think that teams around the league look at Elias Pettersson and think that's a distressed asset right now. Like, he has to be a better player than he's shown, even though we've watched for 2 years and it's been a struggle for him offensively. Most nights the effort's there, the defensive plays, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're one of the highest paid players in the National Hockey League, and it probably won't even get to 45 points or 50 points at this stage of the season. So I think there are teams that would think, in the right situation, as a number 2 center, even with that contract, he could come in and become a 65, 70 point guy at the very least, and maybe more. And so maybe there is a fit there. But, at this stage, I think the bloom is off the rose for teams thinking Elite 1C that's going to come in and, change the course of a franchise. I just don't think that player is there, and he may never resurface again. And it's, going to be a case study years from now about what happened and where it all went sideways and why hasn't he been able to get back to his dominant ways. Like, you just don't become a 102-point player before the age of 25 and then forget how to play hockey. But, and we know that, his wingers haven't played particularly well, and they certainly haven't finished very well this year. And so it kind of goes hand in hand. Some of it's on PD, but some of it's on the guys that he's played with as well. But to answer the question, I haven't ruled out the fact that he may find himself a new home, and it might be in the best interest of the Canucks to, get out from under the contract if they can. But I don't think it's going to happen before the trade deadline. I don't think he's the type of proven playoff performer that teams would be coveting at this stage. So I think it's something that would be pushed closer to the draft and then maybe even into the summer months.
For sure. I mean, hey, at least apparently he plays a pretty darn good goaltender from a few nights ago. So, hey, if teams are in need of a goaltender, maybe PD can throw on some pads. I think I actually had someone in my comments ask me, hey, can you ask him if he can play goaltender? I don't know. I think it was, can't remember exactly what type of fan it was, but it was a fan of another team saying like, hey, can you play goaltender? Thought that was quite funny. Well, thank you very much for doing this, Jeff. I don't want to take up obviously too much of your time. I know, like I said, you're very busy. It's Monday mid to late afternoon. So I appreciate you coming on and coming back on the podcast, talking with us, talking about the team, and the complete, opposite direction of where the last time we talked, where this team was, really the definition of a roller coaster, or at least, going down one. But yeah, once again, thanks for doing this, Jeff. Really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you maybe at the next watch party.
Yeah, well, probably. I think I'll be at the next one. So if you're there, then absolutely. We'll certainly say hi, maybe get in a game of air hockey. And thanks for having me on. Buckle up. Final 30 games. There's still 30 games remaining in this season. 5 before the Olympic break and then the 25 after that. So, there's a lot of hockey left to be played. And I guess we'll have to see how many wins there are in those 30 games.
For sure. And once again, I'll be sure to keep my composure playing a game of air hockey as well. Thanks again, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do this again, maybe towards the end of the season or in the off season, maybe once the draft has happened. Would love to have you back on. But once again, thanks again for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks, man. All right, that was JPat. Hope you guys enjoyed having JPat on. That was actually the longest him and I have talked. That was actually pretty great. We covered a lot of ground, and that was very enjoyable. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And if you guys did like it, feel free to hit that like button. If you want to stay up to date on all your Vancouver Canucks content, be sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a single video. We currently have our merchandise store is online. We're currently selling our 1-year anniversary collection, which will be February 14th. So on Valentine's Day is our 1 year. That was the day I posted my very first video. Go ahead, check it out. Complete with a redesigned logo, both blue and green, and in our skate version of the logo, and I must say those black hoodies with the skate logo absolutely look fire. Same thing with the white ones. Check it out, thelinechangepodcast.threadless.com. Also, if you want to take part in more discussions like the one we had earlier before we brought Jeff on, join our official Discord. There is a link to it in the description down below. It's completely free to join, so go ahead and do that if you so wish to do so. You can find and interact with us on social media. We're everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, even Blue Sky. Feel free to give us a follow on all of our social media platforms. Also, speaking of platforms, if you prefer an audio version of this podcast, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcast. On Spotify, feel free to give us a follow, as well as rate and review us on either platform. It is, of course, greatly appreciated and really helps out the podcast. Something else that helps out the podcast, if you have an absolutely favorite episode, like, for example, perhaps this one, and you want to watch it over and over again, feel free to download your favorite episode. That, too, also really helps out the podcast. And, of course, we are greatly appreciative of that as well. I noticed all the comments. I apologize, you guys, if you had any questions. Unfortunately, I didn't want to take up too much of JPat's time, and I had a bunch of things that I wanted to ask him. So, once again, appreciate you guys being here. Thanks once again for showing up. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed this interview with JPat. Hopefully, we'll have him on again. And as always, go Canucks, go. Tank, Canucks, tank. Whichever one you want to use. But I'll catch you guys in the next video. Booyah.